Today, the UK wants to ban non-violent dissent, bans privacy, and considers seceding from European Convention on Human Rights. Your host is Rick Falvinger, and this is Liberties Report.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Good evening and welcome to Liberties Report Week 40. Last week we spoke about Australia, and this week it's the United Kingdom that appears to have gone off the deep end. When you thought a European country couldn't get much more repressive, we get this.
The UK Minister of the Interior, Theresa May, has announced new laws for next year that will criminalise what they define as non-violent extremism, with the key word being non-violent. No crimes need to have taken place, no violence committed, just the communication of opinions that the government considers extremist. This week, it's also been discovered that the UK police have used warrantless searches enabled by anti-terror laws to uncover newspaper sources. The country further considers leaving the European Convention on Human Rights.
So the United Kingdom is considering criminalising non-violent extremist views, with the definition being completely up to the government. That sounds scary enough already, and it doesn't help that Occupy London, who held a peaceful protest against inequality in the UK outside of the London Stock Exchange, was classified as low-level terrorism. This is pretty much an unprecedented restriction in freedom of speech, a ban on opinions that are in no conceivable way connected to violence or discrimination, just considered to be outside the scope of mainstream acceptable opinions. This is what terror laws do. They aren't necessary to prosecute people who wreak destruction. We already have laws for that, with charges usually called something like wreckage of destruction. Instead, anti-terror laws have, without exception, been targeted at dismantling the rule of law, dismantling the checks on police powers, and dismantling the presumptions of innocence. The UK REPA laws, short for Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, were the ones used by police when they rightfully couldn't get a court warrant for investigating media sources. So when they were refused access by court, they played the terror card and suddenly had access by demanding the phone call logs from the phone company instead. So there goes the right to protect your sources in the UK. It's gone now, with the police able to go directly to phone companies and demand call logs by mumbling something vague about terrorism. You don't even get a say. You're not even involved in determining whether your own phone calls are privileged and protected. RIPA, by the way, is Orwellian newspeak in itself. It's not regulation of investigatory powers. It's unregulation of the same. Normally, the difference between a state of law and a state of police is that the police are checked in the state of law, that the police don't get everything they point at. Let's take a closer look at what else is in that law package, REPA. For one, you're not allowed to have secrets. Yes, there is literally a ban on privacy. You're not allowed to encrypt, or rather, you're allowed to encrypt, but if you don't hand over the encryption keys to police on demand, you're bound for more or less automatic 5 years in jail, which makes the point of encrypting kind of moot in the first place. And actually, it goes beyond that. It's not just failing to decrypt something that lands you in jail, it's failing to make something legible that the police claim is encrypted. For example, if you have a file with radio noise for whatever valid reason, it'll look exactly like an encrypted file. And when the police tells you to hand over the key, and you truthfully say you don't have any, you're off to jail for 5 years. This is what terror laws do. They aren't anti-terror laws, they're terror laws. There's a reason Privacy International is classifying the United Kingdom as an endemic surveillance society, the lowest possible grade of countries that respect privacy, respect human rights, and respect the rule of law. And the most scary parts of this is that we're talking about a country in Europe which is supposed to be a moral example to dictatorships and other regimes who do not respect human rights. At least that's the colors Europe likes to dress itself in. With countries like this in the Western world, there's no guiding star for civil liberties whatsoever anymore. Possibly Iceland. But at least the United Kingdom is consistent on that point, currently discussing whether to secede from the European Convention on Human Rights. That would put them in company with Belarus, which is currently the only European country that refuses to sign it. Even Russia is a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. This whole development should be going in pretty much the exact opposite direction, and the United Kingdom is not alone in going in the completely wrong direction with regard to human rights, even if they're one of the worst examples among countries in the West who claim to be morally superior on the very specific point of view of civil liberties. I'm Rick Falkfinger, and this is Liberties Report. Visit our sponsor, Private Internet Access. Good night.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Liberties Report is produced using exclusively free software.